Introduction. Books on Hard Work and Discipline. James Clear's Atomic Habits is a book that explores the immense power of small, consistent changes and how they compound over time to create extraordinary results. The fundamental premise of the book is that success is not achieved through drastic transformations or occasional bursts of motivation but through the steady accumulation of good habits and the elimination of bad ones. Clear begins by debunking the common misconception that achieving greatness requires monumental shifts in behavior, arguing instead that even a 1% improvement each day can lead to exponential growth over months and years. This concept, which he calls the aggregation of marginal gains, is a powerful reminder that every small action contributes to a larger outcome. Many people struggle with forming habits because they focus solely on the end goal rather than the processes and systems that drive progress. Clear asserts that goals are useful for setting a direction, but they are insufficient for ensuring long-term success. The real key lies in developing effective systems, habits that support identity change and align with one's desired future self. Rather than simply striving to lose weight or become productive, he suggests that people should shift their mindset to focus on the type of person they want to become, such as a person who values fitness or a person who stays organized. This identity-based approach to habit formation makes behavioral change more sustainable because it transforms self-perception, making discipline an intrinsic part of one's character rather than a temporary effort. Another core idea of Atomic Habits is that our environment plays a far greater role in shaping our habits than sheer willpower or motivation. While many individuals blame their lack of discipline on personal failings, Clear explains that people are largely products of their surroundings. The way spaces are designed, the cues present in daily life, and the accessibility of good or bad habits all influence behavior more than people realize. For instance, someone who keeps unhealthy snacks in plain sight is more likely to indulge in them, whereas making healthier choices easier to access naturally reinforces better habits. Clear introduces the concept of habit stacking, which involves linking new habits to existing routines, making it easier to integrate them seamlessly into daily life. He also discusses the power of cues, cravings, responses, and rewards in shaping behavior, which leads to his 4 laws of behavior change. Make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfy. By following these principles, individuals can create an environment that fosters positive habits while reducing friction for undesirable ones. The book also explores the psychology of habit formation, explaining why people often fail to sustain their resolutions. Many rely too much on motivation, which is fleeting and unreliable, rather than focusing on discipline and structure. Clear emphasizes that habits should be designed to be as easy as possible to follow, especially in the beginning. The 2-minute rule, which he introduces, suggests that any new habit should be scaled down to a version that takes 2 minutes or less to complete. For example, instead of committing to reading a book every day, one might start by reading a single page. This approach makes habits more approachable and reduces the mental resistance that often prevents people from taking action. Over time, these small actions naturally expand, leading to consistent routines that become second nature. Another key aspect of habit formation is tracking progress and staying accountable. Clear highlights the power of habit tracking as a visual and psychological reinforcement tool, where checking off completed tasks provides a sense of accomplishment and reinforces positive behavior. Additionally, he discusses the role of social influences in shaping habits, emphasizing that surrounding oneself with like-minded individuals can reinforce discipline and make success more likely. People tend to mirror the behaviors of those around them, which means that being part of an environment that values productivity, fitness, or learning can make adopting such habits easier and more natural. One of the most important takeaways from Atomic Habits is that discipline and habit formation are not about being perfect but about being consistent. Failure is inevitable, and everyone will occasionally miss a workout, eat unhealthy food, or procrastinate on important work. However, Clear stresses that missing once is not a problem. Falling into the habit of missing repeatedly is what leads to failure. He encourages adopting the mindset of never missing twice, meaning that if one slips up, they should get back on track immediately rather than letting a single failure derail progress. This approach prevents minor setbacks from turning into long-term habits of inconsistency. Additionally, the book highlights the importance of making habits satisfying in order to reinforce them. Immediate rewards, even small ones, can help sustain motivation in the early stages before the long-term benefits become apparent. For example, if someone wants to build a habit of saving money, they can reward themselves with a small pleasure after setting aside a certain amount. Over time, the habit itself becomes rewarding, making external incentives unnecessary. Ultimately, Atomic Habits is not just about building discipline but about designing a lifestyle that makes success inevitable. Clear argues that people do not rise to the level of their goals but fall to the level of their systems. By refining daily routines, adjusting one's environment, and reinforcing positive behaviors through small, intentional actions, anyone can create a life driven by discipline, productivity, and continuous improvement. The introduction to the book lays the foundation for this transformative approach by shifting the focus from overwhelming, drastic changes to the power of small, consistent efforts. It challenges readers to rethink how they approach habit formation, offering a practical, science-backed strategy for long-term success. The key message is clear. Lasting change is not about making a single massive effort but about committing to incremental progress, allowing habits to compound over time and ultimately shape a more disciplined and successful life. Chapter 1. The Surprising Power of Atomic Habits lays the foundation for James Clear's central argument that small, incremental changes lead to significant and lasting transformation. He begins by explaining that most people approach self-improvement with the wrong mindset, believing that success comes from dramatic shifts or massive overhauls. However, he asserts that real progress is the result of tiny, consistent actions that compound over time, much like compound interest in finance. This concept, which he refers to as the aggregation of marginal gains, is illustrated through various real-world examples, including the British cycling team's remarkable turnaround. By focusing on small improvements, such as optimizing the riders' sleep, refining their diets, and making tiny aerodynamic adjustments to their bikes, the team went from being mediocre to dominating the sport, winning multiple Olympic gold medals and Tour de France titles. Clear argues that this same principle applies to personal development. Improving just 1% each day may seem insignificant in the moment, but over months and years, it leads to exponential growth. The problem is that most people give up too soon because they expect instant results. He introduces the idea of the plateau of latent potential, a phase where hard work seems to yield no visible improvement, leading many to quit prematurely. He compares this to the moment before an ice cube melts. Although the temperature is rising, the change is not immediately visible until a critical threshold is reached. The key, he emphasizes, is to persist beyond this plateau, trusting that the cumulative effects of small habits will eventually break through. Clear also challenges the conventional wisdom that setting goals is the best way to achieve success. While goals provide direction, he argues that systems, consistent habits and routines, are far more important because they determine whether progress is sustainable. He points out that winners and losers often have the same goals, yet their outcomes differ because of the systems they implement. For instance, two people might aim to lose weight, but the one who focuses on building sustainable habits, such as consistently eating healthier and exercising daily, will succeed, whereas the one who relies solely on motivation will struggle. Another key insight from this chapter is the distinction between outcome-based habits and identity-based habits. Most people focus on achieving a specific result, such as "I want to run a marathon" or "I want to save money," but Clear suggests that a more effective approach is to shift identity, thinking of oneself as a runner or a financially responsible person. This mindset change makes habits more sustainable because they become tied to one's self-image rather than being seen as temporary efforts. He provides a practical example. If a person trying to quit smoking is offered a cigarette and says, "No, thanks, I'm trying to quit," they are still identifying as a smoker attempting to change. However, if they say, "No, thanks, I don't smoke," they are reinforcing a new identity that aligns with their desired behavior. By focusing on identity, habits become a natural extension of who a person is, making discipline easier to maintain. The chapter also touches on the role of environment in shaping behavior, explaining that habits are not just about willpower but about designing surroundings that make good habits easier and bad habits harder. For example, someone trying to read more might place books in visible locations, while someone trying to cut back on social media might remove distracting apps from their phone. Clear concludes the chapter by reinforcing the idea that small habits, when compounded, lead to significant life changes. He encourages readers to trust the process, focus on identity transformation, and commit to gradual progress, as this is the most effective way to achieve long-term success. Chapter 2. How Your Habits Shape Your Identity delves into the deep connection between personal identity and habit formation, emphasizing that true and lasting change comes not from setting goals but from altering the way we see ourselves. James Clear argues that most people approach self-improvement the wrong way by focusing on outcomes instead of the underlying identity that drives behavior. He explains that habits are not just actions we take but reflections of the type of person we believe ourselves to be, and lasting change occurs when we shift our focus from what we want to achieve to who we want to become. For example, instead of setting a goal like, I want to lose 20 pounds, it is more effective to shift to an identity-based perspective by saying, I am a healthy person who makes smart food choices. By anchoring habits in identity, individuals create a self-image that naturally supports the behaviors necessary for success. Clear introduces a powerful concept. Every action we take is a vote for the kind of person we want to become. Each time we go to the gym, we reinforce the identity of being a fit person. Each time we choose to read instead of scrolling through social media, we reinforce the identity of being a reader. Conversely, every time we skip a workout or procrastinate on a project, we reinforce a different identity, often without realizing it. Over time, the repeated behaviors we engage in shape our self-perception, meaning that our habits ultimately define who we are. This is why it is crucial to develop habits that align with the identity we wish to embody, as it makes discipline and consistency more natural. Clear provides an example of how identity influences behavior by discussing smokers trying to quit. A person who says, I'm trying to quit smoking, still identifies as a smoker attempting to change, making it easier to revert to old habits. However, a person who says, I don't smoke, has fully adopted a non-smoker identity, making the behavior change more permanent. This shift in self-perception makes habits feel more automatic rather than forced. The problem, Clear explains, is that many people fall into the trap of outcome-based thinking, where they believe success is about achieving specific results, like losing weight, writing a book, or earning more money, without addressing the habits and identity that sustain those results. He argues that focusing on goals alone is not enough because once a goal is achieved, motivation often fades, leading to regression. This is why many people lose weight only to gain it back or achieve a milestone only to fall back into old habits. Instead, he suggests that people should focus on building systems that align with their desired identity, as systems lead to sustainable progress even after a goal has been reached. Identity-based habits work because they change the way we see ourselves, making actions feel like a natural expression of who we are rather than something we have to force ourselves to do. Clear explains that identity is not fixed but is shaped by our habits over time. People often label themselves in ways that limit their potential, saying things like, I'm bad at math, I'm not a morning person, or I have no willpower, without realizing that these are just stories they have told themselves based on past behaviors. He encourages readers to question these assumptions and rewrite their self-image by proving to themselves, through small repeated actions, that they can become whoever they choose to be. A person who wants to become a writer doesn't need to write a novel overnight. They simply need to build the habit of writing every day, reinforcing the identity of being a writer. Likewise, someone who wants to be fit doesn't need to complete a marathon right away. They just need to show up at the gym consistently until exercise becomes part of their identity. Clear also emphasizes the importance of celebrating small wins as a way to reinforce identity change. Even tiny improvements, when repeated, can build confidence and strengthen the belief that we are becoming the person we aspire to be. He shares a story of a man who wanted to lose weight but started by simply going to the gym for 5 minutes each day. While this might seem insignificant, it helped him develop the identity of someone who exercises regularly, making it easier to build upon that foundation. Over time, his workouts naturally became longer and more intense, leading to real transformation. This approach highlights the power of small, identity-driven actions that eventually lead to major life changes. Another key insight from this chapter is that identity is not something we are born with but something we can actively shape. Clear explains that many of our habits are formed unconsciously through repeated experiences, and we often adopt identities based on what we have done in the past. However, just because we have behaved a certain way before does not mean we are destined to stay the same. We have the power to redefine ourselves by changing our habits, and the best way to do that is through small, consistent actions that align with the identity we want to embody. He encourages readers to ask themselves, who is the type of person that could achieve what I want? And then start acting like that person even in small ways. For example, if someone wants to become a more organized person, they can start by tidying up their desk each morning. If someone wants to be more confident, they can practice speaking up in small conversations. These small actions accumulate over time, reinforcing the new identity until it becomes second nature. Clear concludes the chapter by reinforcing the idea that lasting change is not about setting bigger goals but about shifting identity. By focusing on who we want to become and aligning our habits with that vision, we make self-improvement feel natural rather than forced. He reminds readers that every action is a vote for the person they want to be, and by consistently choosing habits that reflect their ideal identity, they can reshape their lives in profound ways. The key takeaway is that habits are not just about behavior change but about identity transformation. When we adopt the identity of the person we want to become, discipline becomes easier, and success follows naturally as a result. Chapter 3. The 4 Laws of Behavior Change introduces a powerful framework for building good habits and breaking bad ones by understanding how human behavior is shaped by external and internal influences. James Clear explains that habits form through a continuous feedback loop consisting of 4 key steps: cue, craving, response, and reward. Each habit begins with a cue, which is a trigger that initiates a behavior. The cue leads to a craving, which is the desire or motivation behind the habit. This craving then prompts a response, which is the actual behavior or action taken. Finally, the response leads to a reward, which provides satisfaction and reinforces the habit, making it more likely to be repeated in the future. Understanding this loop is crucial because it reveals how habits are formed and why they persist over time. To help individuals build good habits and break bad ones, Clear distills these 4 steps into what he calls the 4 laws of behavior change. Make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfy. These principles provide a simple and practical guide for designing behavior in a way that aligns with long-term goals and identity-based habits. The first law, make it obvious, emphasizes the importance of creating clear cues that trigger desired behaviors. Many habits fail to take root because people rely on motivation instead of designing their environment in a way that naturally encourages good habits. Clear explains that the human brain is constantly scanning for cues, and by making these cues more noticeable, habits become easier to adopt. For example, if someone wants to develop a reading habit, placing a book in a visible location, such as on a nightstand or desk, serves as a cue to read. Conversely, if one wants to break a bad habit like watching too much television, removing the remote control from immediate reach or placing the TV in a less convenient location makes the cue less obvious, reducing the likelihood of engaging in the habit. Another useful strategy Clear introduces is habit stacking, which involves pairing a new habit with an existing one. Since people already have established routines, attaching a new behavior to an existing habit increases the chances of consistency. For example, if someone wants to start meditating, they can attach it to their morning coffee routine by deciding to meditate for 2 minutes immediately after brewing coffee. This approach leverages the brain's natural tendency to link behaviors together, making the new habit more automatic. Awareness is also a crucial part of making habits obvious, which is why Clear recommends habit tracking or writing down behaviors to recognize patterns and take control of habitual actions. The second law, make it attractive, focuses on increasing the appeal of good habits to ensure they are more compelling than bad ones. Clear explains that habits are driven by dopamine, a neurotransmitter associated with pleasure and motivation. The more enjoyable a habit feels, the more likely it is to be repeated. To make habits attractive, Clear suggests temptation bundling, a technique that pairs a desired habit with an enjoyable activity. For example, someone who wants to exercise but loves watching Netflix can decide to only watch their favorite show while on a treadmill. This approach leverages natural rewards to reinforce positive behaviors, making them more appealing. Another important aspect of making habits attractive is social reinforcement. Humans are inherently influenced by their environment and the behaviors of those around them. Clear explains that people tend to adopt habits that align with their social circles, whether consciously or unconsciously. For instance, if someone spends time with health-conscious friends, they are more likely to develop healthy habits like eating well and exercising. This principle suggests that surrounding oneself with individuals who embody the desired habits can make those behaviors more natural and enjoyable. Similarly, joining a community that shares a common goal, such as a writing group, a fitness class, or a professional network, can provide accountability and motivation, making habits more sustainable. The key to this law is ensuring that good habits are not just beneficial but also enjoyable and socially rewarding, as this increases the likelihood of long-term adherence. The third law, make it easy, addresses the common misconception that habits require intense effort or motivation. Clear argues that the key to building long-lasting habits is to reduce friction and lower the difficulty of starting a new behavior. Many people fail to build habits because they set unrealistic expectations or make the process too complicated. To counter this, he introduces the 2-minute rule, which suggests that any new habit should start in its simplest form, taking no more than 2 minutes to complete. For example, instead of committing to reading for an hour every day, one could start by reading just 1 page. Instead of aiming to run 5 miles, one could begin by putting on running shoes and stepping outside. The idea is that once an action is started, it becomes easier to continue, as momentum builds naturally. By focusing on showing up rather than achieving perfection, individuals can establish consistency, which is the foundation of habit formation. Another strategy to make habits easier is optimizing the environment to remove obstacles. If someone wants to eat healthier, keeping fruits and vegetables readily available while eliminating junk food from the home reduces the effort required to make good choices. Similarly, laying out workout clothes the night before increases the likelihood of exercising in the morning. The fewer steps and decisions required to perform a habit, the more likely it is to become automatic. Clear also highlights the importance of repetition over perfection, stating that habits are formed through frequency, not just duration. Rather than worrying about doing something perfectly, focusing on doing it regularly is what truly matters. The fourth law, make it satisfies, revolves around the importance of immediate rewards and reinforcing good habits. The human brain is wired to prioritize instant gratification, which is why bad habits, like eating junk food or scrolling through social media, are so easy to maintain. These behaviors provide immediate pleasure, even if they have negative long-term consequences. To counter this, Clear suggests making good habits more immediately rewarding to increase their likelihood of sticking. One strategy is using habit tracking, which involves keeping a visual record of progress, such as checking off days on a calendar or using an app to monitor streaks. Seeing tangible progress provides a sense of accomplishment, making the habit more satisfying. Another effective method is implementing immediate rewards for completing a habit. For example, after completing a workout, one could reward themselves with a small pleasure like a healthy smoothie or an episode of a favorite show. Over time, as the habit becomes ingrained, the activity itself becomes rewarding, and external incentives become less necessary. The key to this law is ensuring that good habits feel satisfying in the moment rather than just in the distant future. Clear also discusses how to break bad habits by inverting the 4 laws of behavior change. To stop an undesirable habit, one should make it invisible, remove cues, make it unattractive, associate it with negative consequences, make it difficult, increase friction, and make it unsatisfying, attach immediate costs to bad behavior. For example, someone trying to reduce screen time could put their phone in another room, making it invisible, set app limits, making it difficult, remind themselves of wasted productivity, making it unattractive, and use accountability measures like telling a friend about their goal, making it unsatisfying. By understanding how habits work and leveraging this framework, individuals can design their lives in a way that promotes discipline, consistency, and long-term success. Conclusion: the 4 laws of behavior change, make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying, serve as a practical guide to building good habits and eliminating bad ones. By designing an environment that supports positive behaviors, linking habits to enjoyable experiences, simplifying the process, and incorporating immediate rewards, anyone can create lasting change without relying on sheer willpower. Clear's framework is built on the idea that habits are not just about self-discipline but about structuring life in a way that naturally reinforces success. By applying these principles consistently, individuals can transform their daily routines, reshape their identities, and achieve their goals with greater ease and effectiveness. Chapter 4. Making Good Habits Easy and Bad Habits Hard. Focuses on the critical principle that successful habit formation is not about sheer willpower or motivation but rather about reducing friction for good habits and increasing friction for bad ones. James Clear emphasizes that most people struggle with consistency not because they lack discipline but because they have made their desired habits too difficult and their bad habits too convenient. The more effortless a behavior is, the more likely it is to be repeated, and conversely, the more difficult it is to engage in a bad habit, the easier it becomes to eliminate it. He introduces the concept of environment design, which suggests that we should structure our surroundings in a way that naturally encourages good habits and discourages bad ones. For example, if someone wants to develop a reading habit, they should keep a book within easy reach, on a nightstand or coffee table, so that it becomes the default choice when they have free time. On the other hand, if they want to reduce screen time, they should place their phone in another room or remove distracting apps from their home screen. This simple act of adjusting the environment makes a significant difference in behavior without requiring extra willpower. Clear also introduces the idea of reducing activation energy, which refers to the effort required to start a habit. The higher the activation energy, the less likely a behavior is to occur. To make good habits easier, one must decrease the number of steps involved in initiating them. For example, if someone wants to work out in the morning, they can set their gym clothes and shoes next to their bed the night before. By eliminating the need to search for workout gear in the morning, they reduce friction and increase the likelihood of following through. Similarly, if someone wants to eat healthier, they can prepare nutritious meals in advance and store them in easily accessible containers, reducing the temptation to grab junk food. On the other hand, to make bad habits harder, one must increase activation energy, adding extra steps to the process. If someone wants to cut back on watching TV, they can unplug it after each use, forcing themselves to go through the hassle of setting it up again before watching. If someone wants to reduce online shopping, they can remove saved payment information, making each purchase require extra effort. By introducing small barriers, undesirable habits become less automatic and, over time, less appealing. Another critical concept Clear discusses is the 2-minute rule, which states that when adopting a new habit, one should start with an action that takes no more than 2 minutes to complete. This principle ensures that habits are easy to start, removing the psychological resistance that often comes with big lifestyle changes. For example, instead of setting a goal to meditate for 30 minutes, one could start with just sitting in a quiet space for 2 minutes. Instead of planning to write a full chapter of a book, one could begin by writing a single sentence. The key is to make starting so simple that it feels impossible to fail. Once the habit is initiated, it becomes easier to extend it naturally. Clear provides examples of people who started with small habits, such as doing 1 push-up a day or reading 1 page, and eventually built them into full-fledged routines. The reason this method works is that it focuses on establishing the routine itself rather than the intensity or outcome. It removes the mental burden of needing to accomplish something significant right away and instead builds consistency, which is the foundation of long-term success. Clear also highlights the importance of automaticity, which refers to the process by which habits become second nature. The more frequently an action is repeated, the less effort it requires, eventually turning into an automatic behavior. He uses the example of tying shoelaces, something that once required conscious effort but now happens effortlessly. The same principle applies to all habits. The goal is to make good behaviors so ingrained that they happen without conscious thought, just like brushing teeth or locking the front door when leaving the house. He explains that habits follow a decay curve, meaning that the more resistance there is to start a habit, the less likely it is to be maintained over time. This is why reducing friction in the early stages is so crucial. It ensures that habits can pass through the initial phase where they feel unnatural and eventually become second nature. Clear further elaborates on environmental cues and their role in shaping behavior. He argues that people often underestimate how much their surroundings influence their actions. For example, individuals are more likely to snack on unhealthy food if it's placed within sight on a kitchen counter, whereas storing it in a less visible location significantly reduces temptation. Similarly, a messy and cluttered workspace can make it harder to focus and be productive, whereas a clean, organized environment promotes efficiency. This is why successful habit formation often comes down to modifying the physical and digital spaces where behaviors occur. By designing an environment that naturally encourages desired actions, people can make self-discipline almost unnecessary. Essential strategy Clear discusses is habit priming, which involves setting up the environment in advance to make a behavior more automatic. For example, if someone wants to practice guitar every day, they can keep the instrument in a visible, easy-to-reach place rather than storing it in a closet. If someone wants to drink more water, they can place a water bottle on their desk. The idea is that when a habit is effortlessly accessible, it becomes far more likely to happen. This principle is used by companies that strategically place products to encourage certain behaviors. For instance, grocery stores placing healthy snacks at eye level or gyms making equipment readily available. The same logic can be applied to personal habit building by structuring spaces in ways that make good choices the path of least resistance. In discussing how to break bad habits, Clear explains that just as good habits should be made easy, bad habits should be made as difficult as possible. One effective method is adding friction, introducing extra steps between the individual and the unwanted behavior. For example, if someone wants to stop mindlessly checking their phone, they can place it in another room or turn it off entirely, adding layers of inconvenience that reduce spontaneous use. Another method is using commitment devices, which are pre-made decisions that limit future behavior. For example, someone who struggles with overeating can use smaller plates to control portion sizes. A person trying to reduce credit card spending can freeze their card in a block of ice, creating an additional barrier that discourages impulsive purchases. These small but powerful adjustments ensure that bad habits are less likely to occur. Clear also touches on social friction, which refers to the impact of social environments on habit formation. He argues that surrounding oneself with people who embody desired behaviors makes those behaviors easier to adopt, while being in environments where bad habits are normalized makes them harder to escape. For example, if someone wants to exercise more, they should spend time with physically active people. If they want to reduce drinking, they should avoid social settings where alcohol is the primary focus. By choosing the right social influences, individuals can make good habits feel more natural and bad habits more difficult to sustain. In conclusion, Clear's chapter emphasizes that habit formation is not about willpower but about designing an environment that makes good habits easy and bad habits hard. By reducing friction, lowering activation energy, and making desired behaviors more automatic, individuals can create habits that stick effortlessly. At the same time, increasing friction for bad habits, such as adding obstacles, removing cues, and implementing commitment devices, makes it far easier to eliminate undesirable behaviors. By shaping one's surroundings, simplifying habit initiation, and focusing on consistency over intensity, anyone can master the art of habit building and make lasting changes without relying on motivation alone. Chapter 5. How to Stay on Track. Of Atomic Habits delves into the crucial concept of staying on track with habit formation, emphasizing that long-term success is not about achieving perfection but about consistently making progress and quickly recovering from setbacks. James Clear highlights that people often abandon their habits not because they lack motivation but because they do not have systems in place to ensure continuity, especially when life becomes unpredictable. He introduces the idea that maintaining habits is less about willpower and more about designing an environment that naturally reinforces desired behaviors. One of the most effective methods for doing so is habit tracking, which serves as both a visual reminder and a motivational tool. By marking off each successful habit completion on a calendar, journal, or app, individuals create a sense of accomplishment and build a streak of continuous effort. The psychological power of habit tracking lies in the principle of reinforcement. When people see tangible evidence of their consistency, they are more likely to maintain their habits. However, Clear warns against the common trap of perfectionism, explaining that missing a day does not equate to failure. He introduces the never miss twice rule, which suggests that while missing a single day is inevitable at times, the key to long-term consistency is ensuring that one lapse does not turn into 2 consecutive missed days. The issue with multiple missed days is that it disrupts the momentum and makes it psychologically harder to restart. He compares habit building to a plane adjusting its trajectory. One small deviation can be corrected easily, but multiple deviations can completely change the destination. This is why individuals should focus on quick recovery rather than dwelling on occasional slip-ups. Another crucial factor in staying on track is minimizing decision fatigue, which occurs when people become overwhelmed by choices and lose the mental energy to follow through with their habits. Clear emphasizes the importance of automation and pre-commitment, which involves reducing the number of decisions required to execute a habit. For instance, someone who wants to eat healthier can meal prep in advance, ensuring that nutritious options are readily available rather than having to make spontaneous decisions that might lead to unhealthy choices. Similarly, scheduling workouts at the same time each week removes the need for constant decision-making, making it easier to stay consistent. He also discusses the power of identity-based habits, which reinforce consistency by linking behaviors to self-perception. Instead of viewing habits as isolated actions, individuals should internalize them as part of their identity. For example, someone who wants to be a consistent runner should not think, "I am trying to run regularly," but rather, "I am a runner." By shifting the focus from outcomes to identity, people create a stronger psychological attachment to their habits, making them more likely to stick. Accountability is another powerful tool for maintaining habits, and Clear explains that external reinforcement often works better than self-discipline alone. Habit contracts, where individuals set specific consequences for failing to follow through on their habits, are an effective way to introduce accountability. For instance, someone trying to wake up early can make a rule that they will pay a friend $10 for every day they fail to get out of bed on time. The financial and social consequence adds weight to the habit, making it harder to ignore. Similarly, having an accountability partner, whether it's a friend, coach, or online community, creates a sense of obligation to stick to habits. People are less likely to quit when they feel they are being watched or when they have made a public commitment. Clear also highlights the role of feedback loops in habit maintenance, explaining that individuals need regular feedback to assess their progress and make necessary adjustments. Feedback can be both quantitative, such as tracking fitness metrics or financial savings, and qualitative, such as reflecting on energy levels or productivity. The key is to ensure that feedback is immediate and specific. The sooner individuals receive feedback, the easier it becomes to reinforce positive behaviors and correct deviations. Fitness trackers, for example, provide instant data on step count and activity levels, making it easier to stay motivated. Similarly, keeping a journal of habit-related reflections can help identify patterns and obstacles that might not be obvious at first glance. One of the biggest reasons people struggle to maintain habits is that they do not see immediate results, leading to frustration and eventual abandonment. Clear introduces the concept of the plateau of latent potential, which explains why progress is often invisible in the early stages of habit formation. He argues that habits function like compound interest. Small actions accumulate over time, but the effects may not be noticeable until a critical threshold is reached. He compares this to an ice cube sitting at 25 degrees Fahrenheit. The temperature may rise gradually to 31 degrees without any visible change, but at 32 degrees the ice finally begins to melt. Many individuals give up at 31 degrees, unaware that they were on the brink of success. To stay on track, Clear advises focusing on the process rather than the outcome, measuring success by consistency rather than immediate results. Instead of fixating on how much weight has been lost, how much money has been saved, or how many pages have been written, individuals should focus on whether they are showing up every day and sticking to the habit itself. Trusting in the process ensures that individuals continue working toward their goals even when progress is not immediately apparent. Another key strategy for maintaining habits is adapting them to different life circumstances. Clear acknowledges that disruptions such as travel, illness, or unexpected responsibilities are inevitable, but instead of abandoning habits entirely during these times, individuals should create scaled-down versions that allow them to maintain momentum. For instance, if someone who normally exercises for an hour finds themselves short on time, they can do a quick 10-minute workout instead. If someone who journals daily is feeling overwhelmed, they can write a single sentence instead of skipping the habit altogether. The idea is to avoid the all-or-nothing mindset, where people feel that if they cannot do something perfectly, they should not do it at all. By adjusting the intensity of habits rather than stopping them completely, individuals maintain continuity and make it easier to return to full capacity once circumstances improve. Clear reinforces that habits do not need to be performed at maximum intensity to be effective. What matters most is maintaining the rhythm of action. He also explores the psychological impact of small rewards in reinforcing habit consistency. While external rewards should not be the primary motivation for maintaining habits, they can serve as useful reinforcement mechanisms. For instance, someone who successfully follows their habits for a week might treat themselves to a small reward, such as watching a favorite show or buying a new book. The key is to ensure that the reward does not contradict the habit itself. Rewarding a week of healthy eating with junk food, for example, would be counterproductive. Clear suggests that rewards should reinforce identity-based habits, making individuals feel more aligned with the person they are becoming. In conclusion, How to Stay on Track emphasizes that habit formation is not about achieving perfection but about developing resilience and systems that encourage consistency. By implementing strategies such as habit tracking, the never miss twice rule, pre-commitment, identity reinforcement, accountability systems, feedback loops, and habit flexibility, individuals can ensure that their habits remain intact even when motivation fluctuates. Clear's core message is that success in building and maintaining habits is not determined by discipline alone but by how well individuals design their systems to encourage long-term adherence. By focusing on small, sustainable actions and trusting in the compounding effects of consistency, individuals can build habits that last a lifetime, ensuring continuous progress without the pressure of perfection. Conclusion. The conclusion of Atomic Habits brings together all the essential principles discussed throughout the book, reinforcing the idea that success is not the result of one-time transformations but the culmination of small, consistent actions over time. James Clear emphasizes that habits are the foundation of identity, and the key to lasting change lies in shifting focus from setting goals to developing systems that naturally lead to progress. He argues that while goals can provide direction, they are temporary and often dependent on external motivation, whereas well-structured habits create an environment where success becomes inevitable. One of the core takeaways from the book is that true behavior change is identity-based, meaning that people need to shift the way they see themselves in order to make habits stick. Instead of trying to force behavior through sheer willpower, individuals should focus on becoming the type of person who naturally engages in the desired behavior. For instance, instead of saying, "I want to run a marathon," a person should say, "I am a runner." By aligning actions with identity, habits become less of an obligation and more of a reflection of one's true self. This mindset shift is crucial because it removes the internal conflict that often makes habit formation difficult. When people view habits as an extension of who they are, they no longer rely on motivation alone to stay consistent. Clear emphasizes that real change is the result of small improvements made consistently over time, reinforcing the idea that tiny habits, or atomic habits, can have a compounding effect similar to interest accruing in a bank account. Just as a single deposit in a savings account may seem insignificant in isolation but grows exponentially over time, small daily improvements can lead to massive long-term results. He illustrates this with the idea that if a person improves by just 1% each day, they will be 37 times better by the end of the year, highlighting the power of compounding in habit formation. However, he also warns that the same principle applies in the opposite direction. Bad habits, if left unchecked, can compound in a negative way, leading to gradual decline over time. This underscores the importance of being mindful of daily choices, as they ultimately shape long-term outcomes. Another key takeaway from the conclusion is that environment plays a more significant role in habit formation than motivation. Clear argues that people often overestimate the importance of willpower and underestimate the power of their surroundings in shaping behavior. He explains that successful habit formation is largely about making good habits easy and bad habits difficult. This means designing an environment that naturally encourages the behaviors one wants to adopt while removing the cues that trigger undesired habits. For example, someone trying to read more can place books in visible areas around the house, while someone trying to reduce screen time can keep their phone in another room while working. The idea is that behavior is heavily influenced by what is immediately available in one's surroundings, and by controlling environmental cues, individuals can make success more likely without relying on willpower alone. This insight challenges the traditional belief that people fail to build good habits because they lack discipline, when in reality, they often struggle because their environment is not set up to support their desired behaviors. Clear also reinforces the importance of making habits attractive, easy, and satisfying by leveraging the 4 laws of behavior change: cue, craving, response, and reward. He reminds readers that habits are formed through a loop that starts with a trigger, followed by a craving, an action, and finally, a reward that reinforces the behavior. By optimizing each step of this loop, individuals can make habit formation more effortless and automatic. He explains that making habits obvious increases the likelihood of starting them, making them attractive increases motivation, making them easy reduces friction, and making them satisfying reinforces consistency. This framework provides a practical guide to ensuring that habits are not only initiated but also sustained over the long term. Clear also revisits the idea that tracking progress and maintaining accountability are critical for staying on course. He emphasizes that what gets measured gets improved, meaning that keeping track of habits, even in simple ways like marking an X on a calendar, can significantly increase adherence. The psychological impact of seeing continuous progress creates momentum, making it easier to stick with a habit. However, he warns against the pitfall of perfectionism, reiterating the never miss twice rule, which encourages individuals to quickly recover from setbacks rather than viewing them as failures. The idea is that occasional slip-ups are inevitable, but what matters most is the ability to return to the habit quickly before negative momentum builds up. This concept reinforces the idea that long-term success is not about being perfect every day but about being consistent over time. He also explains that having accountability partners or external commitments can increase commitment to habits, as people are more likely to follow through when they know someone else is watching or when there are consequences for failure. One of the most powerful insights from the conclusion is the understanding that habits should be adaptable rather than rigid. Many people abandon habits because they adopt an all-or-nothing mindset, believing that if they cannot perform a habit perfectly, they should not do it at all. Clear challenges this notion by encouraging individuals to scale habits down when necessary instead of quitting entirely. For example, if a person who typically exercises for an hour is short on time, doing a 5-minute workout is better than doing nothing. This approach ensures that habits remain intact even when circumstances change, making it easier to return to full capacity when conditions improve. He reminds readers that the goal is not to be perfect every day but to show up consistently in some form. He also highlights the importance of designing habits that align with personal interests and values. Many people struggle with habit formation because they try to adopt behaviors that do not naturally fit their personality or lifestyle. Clear explains that successful habit formation is about finding methods that are enjoyable and sustainable rather than forcing oneself into routines that feel unnatural. He encourages readers to experiment with different strategies until they find what works best for them, reinforcing the idea that habit formation is a flexible process rather than a rigid set of rules. As the book closes, Clear leaves readers with a powerful message that success is not about making radical changes overnight but about committing to small, consistent improvements that compound over time. He reinforces that habits are not just about achieving external results but about becoming the kind of person who embodies the behaviors they seek to maintain. The ultimate goal is not just to develop good habits but to create a lifestyle where these habits are a natural part of one's identity. He encourages readers to shift their focus from temporary motivation to long-term systems, recognizing that lasting change comes from refining daily routines rather than chasing short-lived bursts of inspiration. The key lesson is that every action taken is a vote for the type of person one is becoming, and by consistently making small positive choices, individuals can gradually shape their future in profound ways. He reminds readers that while success in habit formation requires effort and patience, the rewards are well worth it, as habits ultimately determine the trajectory of one's life. The conclusion leaves a lasting impression by reinforcing that transformation is not about a single breakthrough moment but about the cumulative effect of daily actions, encouraging readers to trust in the process and remain committed to continuous improvement.